Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, a podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Together, Jake and his friends interview talents varying from actors, directors, writers, producers, composers, puppeteers, and so much more. Who will they be chatting with today? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. I am one of your co-hosts, Chris Bixby, and with me today, as always, our other co-hosts, Matt Bingel and Wyatt McCullough, and our host, Jake Deffinbaugh. How are you guys?
Really great. How are you?
Great.
How
are you, Chris?
How you really great. How are you, Chris?
Very, very good.
Who we got today, Chris?
So today, we're very excited about today's guest. He is an artist, and he is a designer who has been working for Sesame for a long time, for Sesame Street, working on the Macy's floats, the photo shoots, working on stills of all the different characters. And here he is, Lewis Henry Mitchell. Lewis, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Very good.
Great.
So we know who you are, but for those who don't, would you care to kind of introduce yourself?
Okay, so I'm Lewis Henry Mitchell, and I'm actually the creative director of character design for Sesame Workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And they like us to say this is a nonprofit company that produces Sesame Street, among other things. So, because some people don't know it's nonprofit. So what I do, I mean, it's kind of crazy what I get to do. I design all the new Muppets. I direct all the still studio photo shoots. In the past, I've designed like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade balloons, the float that they still use all these years later.
Yeah.
I'm one of the instructors. I teach. I'm actually probably pretty much the only instructor now that teaches artists all over the world. How to draw the characters, and not just how to draw the characters, but how to become the characters as they draw them, because that's kind of important to really bring their personalities. Sometimes we get different styles. But it still has to be Elmo, or it still has to be Cookie Monster or Grover. It's got to be them, even if it's a different style. Their personalities are how we deliver the initiatives. I do. This is kind of strange. I'm the official portrait artist for Sesame Workshop, which means that whenever they want to celebrate somebody, they have me do a portrait of them to either say goodbye and good luck, or to thank them for something great that they did. I did the Bidens a long time ago, and was a full color illustration too, and they didn't have much time to do it. If you want to talk about that, we can talk about it later. I did Michelle Obama, and she wrote me a beautiful thank you letter.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
Now, also, I work closely with the Jim Henson Company, even sometimes outside of them, because, a while back, there was Julie's Green Room. Julie Andrews had a So they asked me to go and direct the photo shoot for all the promotional materials for that. But they also asked me to direct the Fraggle Rock photo shoot.
Oh, wow.
That was really awesome. Wow. And again, it's because what I do, I love Jim Henson. Happy birthday, Jim.
Yes,
happy birthday, Jim. We're recording this on Jim Henson's birthday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So, again, it's kind of difficult to think of everything that I do. I'm also one of the what do you call them? Historians, I guess. They ask questions, and I know the characters really well. Sometimes they get stumped, and it's good. I like to get stumped. There's just so many characters. But it's been a tremendous opportunity. I didn't know I could do this but we can get into that later on. But I've been there for 30 years, a little over 30 now.
Wow.
So I don't think any of you guys were born when I started working.
No.
No, definitely not.
No, I was 2000.
Also 2000.
You grew up with my work. You've seen my work, and
definitely.
I helped to raise you. So
I definitely did. I definitely did, because I grew up in 1997.
Yeah.
The 90s.
Yeah.
Lucky you. So can you talk about your background and how you grew up?
Yeah, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and it was, great upbringing, primarily because of my mom. My mom was just the champion of my life, and a lot of people didn't really believe that, like a black artist from that part of Brooklyn could ever make it as an artist. Forget about it. People were always telling me forget about it, including my dad. But my mom said, don't pay attention, just keep going. She had to overcome a lot of things too in her life, but she just kept encouraging me, just keep going. Don't pay attention to anybody that says you can't do it. And she was right. So, but in the meantime, you see a piano back there. I had taught myself how to play the piano in school. I never told her that I was teaching myself how to play the piano, but I asked her if we can get a piano. She says, "What for?" I don't know why I didn't tell her. And I was teaching myself how to play. And she one day, I came home and there was a piano in the living room. So that kind of encouragement just really, I mean, I was a really shy and, painfully shy kid. And, I didn't want to show my work to anybody because if they hated it, I would probably die, all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
But as time went on, I just kept at it, like my mom said. And, eventually people started to recognize the talent. I had a great, great art teacher in my 8th grade, Mrs. Charlotte Landau. We were friends until she passed away about 8 years ago. And that was my 8th grade art teacher, but she was the best. Even through college, she was still the best art teacher I ever had. Wow. And so because of her encouragement and I could just go on and on about her, but all these things happened. It just given me an opportunity to learn how to not so much to just have the confidence, but to cultivate the confidence. And eventually I started reaching out for different people. And I worked for, I don't know if you know who Neil Adams is, but he's like a famous comic book artist from back in the 70s.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and he was like my hero. He was like the guy that everybody would worship, Neil. And he passed away earlier this year he passed away, which really is a bummer for me. He was he hired me when I was only 17 years old, and he was hard on people. But because I got to meet him and, he hired me on the spot, and he became kind of like a surrogate dad because my father wasn't really that much in my life. And when I met Neil, he was really, really, really helpful to me. I mean, he was tough, but he was really helpful. And, he taught us, all of the artists, anybody who went through that continuity associate studio, that was like better than college. I mean, you couldn't do better than that. And I'm grateful I'm one of the people that got to go through that studio, man. So, I just kept going. And then through that, this company found out about me called Abrams Gentili Entertainment. And I was like the entire art department, designing toys, doing animation, building puppets, even used my music sometimes to work things out. Yeah, it was really, really tremendous. And then after a while, MTV Animation called me. They wanted me to work on this show called Daria. It's a kind of an older show.
Oh, yeah.
But it was very, very popular back then. So they asked me to be one of the character artists for that. And after a while, things kind of started getting a little strange there. So, and I'd already started working for Sesame doing freelance work, which was really good. I started freelancing in 92, but it was such an immersive experience. I definitely counted. I could talk more about that too later if you want to. But eventually I said, you know what? I want to see if I can get work again at more work from Sesame Street. So I called them up. It had been a while since I did anything for them specifically. Like I did little things here and there, but I called to see if I can get a more robust freelance career with them. And when I called, this guy named Roger Estrada said, Louis, we've been looking for you for the last 3 months. Yeah, if you want freelance, you can have it, but we have a full-time job waiting for you if you want it. And I said, oh, okay, I'll take that. Yeah. And that was how I left a lot of stuff out, but that's the gist of how I got to Sesame Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes people ask me and they'll sing it to me, can you tell me how you got?
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. How did you get into designing and drawing?
Say again?
How did you get into designing and drawing?
Well, I don't really see, for me, it's not really a difference because designing, well, again, look, character design, I tell people, because I taught at the School of Visual Arts and I taught character design. They never had a class like that before. It was an opportunity to really lay a foundation. So character design is not really drawing characters. It's actually creating a visual that's going to deliver something. It's creating an entity, not even a visual. It's creating an entity. Because to me, the greatest character designers are writers. But I love to draw. So I enjoy all kids draw, but I just kept going. Yeah, I just kept going. And eventually again watching the cartoons. The other part, working for Neil Adams was like school. But the other school that I didn't even realize I was going to was watching all the classic cartoons like Bugs Bunny and Popeye and Tom and Jerry, and just all that stuff. When I got into the business, the people in the meetings, in the creative meetings, they always made references back. Hey, you remember when Droopy Dog, blah, 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 or remember when Tom and Jerry, blah, blah, whatever the case may be. and I knew everything they were talking about. There were a few people in there that didn't know, but I knew everything because I watched that stuff like it was church almost. And
Yeah.
it really benefited me to really dig in deep. So because of that, character design is developed from the time a kid is born all the way through. Now, there's a difference. A character artist is somebody who draws characters. Character designer is somebody who actually creates an entity, whether they draw them or not. It doesn't matter the drawing part. It's about you has to become somebody. Got to be a real entity, a person that has thoughts that are separate from your own completely. I can get into that too later on if you want to, but
All right.
Yeah.
I hope I answered your question.
Sure.
Definitely. Yeah.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Sure. Yes, for sure. So getting into that field, who were some of your inspirations?
Wow. Well, Neil Adams, of course, he was the guy that I wanted to be Neil Adams. But there was another artist way back. His name was Gil Kane, and he kind of started. I got my first Spider-Man comic book, and it was a Gil Kane, and I saw this guy can draw, so I tried to draw like him. But when I discovered Neil Adams, it was like watching a movie when I opened the comic book.
Yeah.
So but all those Tex Avery and a lot of those older guys that did all those cartoons that I was growing up. But the one artist that influenced me the most is Norman Rockwell. Do you know who Norman Rockwell is?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every now and then I run into a young person that doesn't really know who Norman Rockwell is. So I'm glad you guys know. That's awesome.
Definitely.
The thing about that is that, he was my favorite of all time. I mean, I really love. And when I was 18 years old, I wrote him a letter. And then years and years later, I'm actually on the board of trustees at the Norman Rockwell Museum, which is just awesome. They invited me to be there when I did a lecture.
Oh wow!
I can tell you how I got to that if you want to know.
Yeah.
But the thing is that he because he influenced me so much. Because even when I direct photo shoots, there are things I learned by looking at Norman Rockwell's compositions and how he depicts his characters and how the realism that he puts into even their expressions. I bring all that to all the photo shoots, and the people always ask, "Wow, the characters come to life in your hands." I said, well, first of all, I love them. They're not characters; they're my friends. And also, I learned so much from Norman Rockwell. Even I was 16 years old when I discovered Norman Rockwell. I was reading this book that he put out. Watson and Guptill put the book out. It was based on something that he had done a long time ago called the Famous Artist School. Like a lot of the older artists would put these lessons together. But anyhow, I didn't get that, but I got this book, in high school. I couldn't afford to buy the book. It was a whole $4.95 back in 1976. So I had to save up my lunch money to buy it. And because I went every day after school, I went to the High School of Art and Design. And the real lesson was in that bookstore because I went every day after school. I hated the weekends because I couldn't visit that book. And one day I went into the bookstore and the book was gone. I said, "Sir," the bookkeeper the store manager was an angel for me because he didn't ever stop me. And I said, "Where's that book that I look at all the time?" He said, "Oh, someone purchased it." And I almost died. I said, "What am I going to?" So he says, "But I have another one in back." So I went back and got it. And I didn't eat lunch for 3 days so I could save up so I could buy that book. And I bought the book. And I still have that same copy too of that book way back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's awesome.
Great. As a matter of fact, there's a new book coming out in October. I think it's supposed to be released October 24th by Abbeville Press. It's Norman Rockwell's drawings, and it was an idea that I threw out when I first became a member of the board. And then I asked a year after that at one of the board meetings, said, "Whatever happened to the idea about that book?" And they said, "Oh, Louis, we're doing the book, and we want you to write the introduction." And I said, "You've got to be kidding me! I get to write the introduction to a book about my favorite artist and my favorite part of his art, which was his drawing." So I just came this past week, and I was over in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, at the museum.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
Doing a lecture, and and even signing autographs. People wanted me to sign their book. I didn't write the book; I wrote the introduction, but the two authors were there as well. But I got most of the attention because I'm the artist of the group. So it was awesome.
So, now, before working on Sesame Street, did you grow up at all watching Sesame Street or the Muppets?
Yeah, I remember. Well, my first encounter with the Muppets were on the Ed Sullivan Show. Another really
nice.
Yeah, and I didn't care about the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or James Brown. I didn't think those guys. But when the Muppets came, there was also Topo Gigi, a little mouse puppet. But when the Muppets came on, I did a running slide in front of the TV. I didn't care who was watching. I was not. This is my moment. So I'd be playing or eating or something like that. As soon as I hear Ed Sullivan, and here come the Muppets, I'd running slide, and I would watch. But afterwards, when Jim Henson came out to shake Ed Sullivan's hand after the performance, I didn't care about him either because I didn't know who that was. I was like 6 years old or maybe younger. But one day he came out, and this was my magic moment, guys. He came out and he still had Kermit on his arm.
Oh, wow.
And I said, again, I'm 6 years old, and it's different. Back then, 6 years old is different from 6 years old now. Now they're all like savvy college students. But back then, I was like this little kid that didn't really know anything except how much I loved the Muppets.
Yeah.
And when Jim Henson came out and he still had Kermit, see, I mean, a man was doing that, and something snapped in my head that never snapped back. It launched me into this wonder world, man. I started building my own puppets, sneaking into the basement, trying to place, because they were lip syncing, but I didn't know they were lip syncing. I just heard them, singing and making music. So I snuck into the basement, just banging away at the piano, just trying to think about what they did. It was just magic. What happened to me, and years and years later, I have a picture. It was actually the segment where Kermit the Frog is playing the piano, and eventually the piano eats him, and he's wearing this tuxedo. And then afterwards, when he came out, it was still Kermit with his tuxedo on. I said, man, that guy. So I started looking for anything that had to do with the Muppets outside of Ed Sullivan. There was a Jimmy Dean show way back then,
Yes.
I kind of got the tail end of it, but still on at that time. And then and every now and then they would appear in different things. It was but when I saw what was it that I saw? It was really, really awesome. Well, yeah, it was the claymation for Sesame Street, because I have animation of all kinds, and I love claymation. And I was watching Channel 13. I think I just finished watching Mr. Rogers because I loved him.
Amazing.
Amazing show.
Yeah,
Amazing
absolutely,
show.
Love
man.
Mr. Rogers.
I can tell you Mr. Rogers' story too, but later. But anyhow, so I'm watching. After Mr. Rogers, I left Channel 13 was still on, and then I see bloop, 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 and these clay figures start forming the letter Sesame Street. I know what that was. That was the very first episode of Sesame. I didn't.
Oh yeah,
I was
right.
I have
there,
not seen it.
but I had no idea what this was. And I'm watching, and I hear Sunny Days. That's kind of cool. And I start seeing, like this black dude walking around. I said, oh, wow, you don't see that very often. And I see this the other people, the Jewish guy, and all these different. They say, wow, this was like my neighborhood. It really was. Different people. Talk about diversity. Sesame was ahead of the game, man. But anyhow, after a while, I saw Big Bird, and I said, that looks kind of like one of those puppets. Is that a puppet? Because I couldn't, because he's walking around and
Right, yeah.
yeah.
But it looks a little bit like those puppets that were on the Ed Sullivan Show by that man. I don't think I knew his name yet. But anyway, I kept watching. I saw Oscar. Back then, Oscar was this orange.
Yeah. I remember.
And I said, gee, that looks like one of those puppets from that man. So I did a little research. And of course, when Sesame Street first came out, a lot of places didn't want to deal with it, but it was becoming very popular very fast. So it was easy to find out who he was, Jim Henson.
Yeah.
That the next year, of course, I'm looking for anything and everything about Jim Henson and the Muppets. The next year, or the following year, 1970, they released a film called The Muppets on Puppets. It was Jim Henson teaching about how he did his puppets, and I mean, he talked about everything. He showed all of his secrets. He wasn't even really famous yet. He was already the most generous artist I had ever known, because I thought other artists were going to be like that too. So I went around looking for other artists to be that generous, and the only one I found like that was Norman Rockwell. So Jim Henson, Norman Rockwell. I have my 5 main mentors, pictures on my desk, my drawing table at Sesame. The first one is Martin Luther King Jr. The second one is Norman Rockwell. Right in the middle is Jim Henson. Then there's Leonard Bernstein, and then Leonardo da Vinci. But right in the middle is Jim Henson. Right next to him is Norman Rockwell. So my 2 boys right next to each other.
Oh, that's so sweet.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Awesome. So how did you start working on Sesame Street?
Well, again, I thought they can use artists, right? I was in college, and I said, maybe I can find a way to work for Jim Henson, maybe even on Sesame Street, which I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Of course, I said when my teacher, he loved my work. He would even use it as examples to the class to show how to do something. And then I felt bad because he would take somebody else's work and show how not to do it, but which was kind of cold. He shouldn't have done that. But even I wrote something on one of my drawings, something about indulging in patience and loving your drawing, something like that. And he actually wrote that in the book that he taught from. I said, wow, he really thinks a lot of my work, even what I wrote. So maybe I can tell him about my dream to work for Jim Henson on Sesame Street. I barely got the words out of my mouth before, oh, Lewis, you're never going to get that job. You're aiming way too high. I believe in you, but you're aiming way too high. And I was like 18 or 19. So I said, oh, well, I guess there goes that dream. But, I'm sitting around the house moping. And my mother didn't put up with that. What are you moping around for? I said, well, Mom, because I told her everything. I said, Mom, that man that I wanted, that does those puppets that I wanted to work for, well, just said, I'm never going to get the job. So I guess I might as well forget about it. And she said, wait a minute, does he work for that man? I said, no. So why are you listening to him? He doesn't even work there. If they don't want you, let them tell you, but don't listen to it. She really got upset at me because all my life, she's telling me, keep going. Don't listen to anybody as a naysayer. Right. But that was my college teacher who loved my work. So it was he was in a different realm for me. But anyhow, it took me a while, but finally I started to submit my portfolio. And there was this wonderful woman that worked at Henson. I like to say her name is Jennifer Lupinacci. She was the receptionist downstairs. So I would drop off my work and she said, I'll see who I can give it to. It's really good work. And I go back to get my portfolio and said, well, Lewis, it was be a note in there. And it said, beautiful work, but, we don't have any work for you, but your work is really great. So, okay, well, I like my work. Maybe I'll try again, next month. I tried again the following month. And I got the same letter, different person. But it was like, your work is wonderful. We don't have any positions or any work for you, but this is really great. And I kept trying. So after about 4 months of this, I said, but I got to be more aggressive. So I started going every couple of weeks, and I started going every week. And I started to really feel, because it's the same story every time. Yeah. Beautiful, wonderful work, but we don't have anything for you. So I said, maybe that teacher was right. Maybe I can't get this job. So again, trying to hold on to what my mom said, but I was dropping the stuff off. This is already 8 months in. So I said, this is the last time. If I don't get something positive this time with a real job of some kind, I guess he was right, and I'm just going to give up. And I was really going to give up at that point because it was breaking my heart. So I really want this, but if I keep going, that teacher, what he said in my head was ringing, and it got louder and louder. Every time I went up there and got that same, it wasn't a rejection. It was just like they don't have work, but they love my work. So finally, I dropped it off, and I said, Jennifer, if I don't get something this time, I'm giving up. I said, Lewis, please, no, don't give up. So I can't keep doing this. This really hurts. I really love the Muppets. I really want to work for Jim Henson. And Jim Henson was still alive at the time, of course. And said, and I really love Sesame Street, but this is tearing me up. So I left the portfolio, went home. By the time I got home, I saw that back then they had tape answering machines. Mm-hmm. And there was a little red light on it. Yeah. And I said, I looked at it, didn't really think much of it. But I clicked on it. And I heard a man say, hi, this is Jim Mahan. I work for the Jim Henson Company and for Sesame. Well, at the time, it was really Children's Television Workshop. I think they were transitioning into Sesame Workshop. He says, I didn't see your work before, but they told me that you've been coming up with showing your portfolio. And I really love your work. And I'd like to get you started on the project. Can you give me a call so I can, give you a job at Sesame?
Oh, wow.
Oh, my gosh.
And I think unfortunately, because that was a tape, and I played that thing over and over and over and over. I mean, I wore it out. I wore out the tape. I wish I still had it now. I wore it out, and I don't care because I got the job. But so when I went up, I called him up. He was a sweet guy, tough as nails, but just a sweet guy. Even though he had to be tough because he was one of the keepers of the vision of Sesame. That was the face of Sesame with the Muppets. So he had to make sure that they looked right wherever they were. So he was tough on me. But the very first job I got was for toddler sneakers, and it was just Ernie's face. There was gonna be about a quarter of an inch big, And so, but to me, that was the biggest job in the world. I made it to Sesame as a freelance artist, and the more I did, the more people wanted me. I started getting work from all these other places, and then after a while, people started to, what do you call it again? They started to bid for me to be their exclusive artist, and I didn't know this was going on.
Oh,
But then
What?
I walk in one day with with some work, and her name was Mimi. I forgot her last name, but Mimi said, "Louis, I have kind of a surprise for you. You know, 3 companies have been bidding for you to be their exclusive artist, and Romar International won. You're going to be the exclusive artist for Romar." And at first I went, I don't want to be the exclusive artist. I want to do a lot of different things. I didn't know Romar was this gigantic company that did everything: bed sheets, lunch boxes, t-shirts, clothes, bags, everything. And I was doing all that work, and I made a lot of money that during that time. But even better than that was all the work I get to do. It was really, really amazing. And again, Jim Mann was the art director. I brought him the work, and they would give it to the company. But he was tough. It took me 6 months to learn how to draw Big Bird correctly without any art direction. So that's kind of how I got to Sesame Street. Now I started doing that work. Yeah. And I can't call it work because, all these years later, I mean, when I first got there, of course, I'm all excited. When they asked me to come on full time and they gave me an office in there, I said, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." And so I said, "I'm going to come in here every day at 7:30. I'm going to be at work." So the people came over there. Some of these were jaded. Some of them have been in for a long time. I don't see how you could get jaded at Sesame. I've been there 30 years, and I'm more excited now than ever. So the thing is that people come up and they were saying, "Oh, Louis, we love your enthusiasm, but it's going to die down after a while." 30 years in, I still get in between 7:30 and 8 o'clock every time we go in the office. I mean, even when I'm working from home, I'm up way, way early because I like to practice and draw before I do any of the work, just to warm up.
Yeah.
But to this day, I can't wait to get in there. I cannot wait. It never got old. They were wrong. I thought, well, I guess they're right, but right now I don't care. But all these years in, I'm the creative director of character design for Sesame Street, man. Come on. And it's not so much, I'm not bragging. I'm saying this little kid from Brooklyn who everybody told him you'd never make it. And now my dream came true and went way beyond what I expected. I never expected I'd be the one to design all the new Muppets. And that's what Jim Henson was doing. So I'm telling you, it was just a miracle for me. It's an absolute, and people say you must be really proud of yourself. It's not pride, man. It's gratitude. It is absolute gratitude.
For sure.
I'm so grateful.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
So that's the short answer.
Definitely.
What was it like getting to work there for the first time?
Oh, no, that's a good question because I remember, well, again, doing the freelance work was one thing. And again, it was very immersive. After a while, Sesame, I don't know if you remember this, but you might remember this. They had Sesame around the corner where they had the Furry Arms Hotel.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when after a while, I had to help this guy, Jim Mahan, to establish that 2-dimensionally so that we could start illustrating all the new assets. So I was practically living on the set. The first Muppeteer that I met was Carol Spinney.
Rest in peace.
I just love, absolutely, man. Love that man. I know he probably said it to other people. He called me his favorite artist. He had like 3 of my pieces of artwork in his house. But that was fun because he was doing Oscar in the Sloppy Jalopy, which was just so fun, man. But I kind of lost track of thought there. But I'm so sorry. What was the original question? So many games. I'll get back.
What was it like getting to work there?
All right, the first day. So anyhow, as a full time, they asked me to come on full time in 2000. So one of you guys were born in 2000.
Yeah.
So that day,
me and Matt. Yep.
You brought me luck that day. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I remember, I went to the HR department. They talked to me, tell me what it is, and they said, "Now we'll show you where your desk is." I'm looking for a desk, and they can go walk me into my own private office, which I said, "Whoa, this is awesome." And so I'm sitting there, and I can't believe that I'm here. And it was very surreal. It was like, is this for real? Am I really here? And then my dear friend who passed away a few years ago, Nancy Stevenson. She came in, and at first I think I heard this gigantic loud laugh, which she had the greatest laugh on the planet. And she comes in and she says, "Hi, Louis, I'm Nancy. Just want to welcome you to Sesame, all that kind of stuff." She was being really sweet to me and everything like that. And so that kind of made me say, yeah, this is really happening. It's really happening. And it was just beautiful, And the first person to call was, Kevin Clashes, of course.
Yeah.
That's the first person that I called. I said, Kevin, because I had been doing work with him too. A lot of his own projects and some of the Sesame stuff. I did like storyboards for him, a lot of storyboards, and then character and puppet design for him separately from Sesame. I learned about him because of the freelance work I got at Sesame. But then I said, Kevin, you're not going to believe where I am. Said, where are you? So I'm in my own office at Sesame Workshop. Get out of here. I'm here. It's a full-time position.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So that was a good time up there, and still have a good time. It's great when your dream comes true. Something happens to you. That's why I always, whenever people I do interviews like this, and people reach out to me, like usually on LinkedIn, I get, or like Facebook Messenger, and so people write, and whenever young people reach out to me, and it's so great you have this life, but I don't know if I could do it. And I said, look, please, you can do it because I did it. A little kid from Brooklyn. I didn't know what I was doing. I was shy out of my mind, and I just stayed with it. That's the key, to stay with it and really dedicate yourself to it, not just put around with it. To really, guys, I'm telling you, I really went after it. As shy as I was, I knew this was what I wanted, and so. That's again the short answer. my first day at Sesame, which was just, I can see it. I'm close, and I remember my first assignment as a full-time person was to blue line. Blue lining is correcting the either artwork, or you take a picture of a plush doll or a sculpture, and then you put, back then you put tracing. Now it's done with Photoshop, but back then you put tracing paper over it, and you take a blue pencil and you correct it to make them, make sure that they get the proportions correct and all that. Mm-hmm. My very first job was, remember the show Dragon Tales?
Yes. Great show. Amazing show.
Awesome show. Well, I remember the first assignment was to blue line a plush doll of Cassie.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
This is so awesome. It wasn't Muppets, but it was still Sesame Workshop.
Right.
Yeah.
And
oh my God.
It wasn't long after that all the other Muppet stuff came in. I had already been doing Muppet stuff as a freelancer. So this is nice. That means that I was really getting immersed into the entirety of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. So what was it like meeting the rest of the crew and the Muppet performers?
Just beautiful. I mean, again, those people, it's not work for them either. It is work, and it's important work. I know that, but they have such a good time. I mean, even between takes, I mean, they're very serious. I mean, because look, the show's very expensive to do, but they're there to make sure that the life and the love come through. So they're joking around with each other and everything like that. Yeah, and you know, when the camera's not rolling, the characters use language that sometimes you don't expect to hear from them. But again, it's all in fun. They do a lot of. But like I said, the first one I met was Carol Spinney, who was just divine. Yeah, I remember when I went there, I told my son was 9 years old at the time. I said, "Look, I don't know if it's allowable, but can I bring my son? Because it's the first time going to the set of Sesame, and I can't go without my son." So they said, "Well, back then we don't really do that, but sure, if he behaves himself, he's 9 years old, he won't, So he went there. And he starts asking me these. He's a very brilliant guy. His name is Michael Anthony, like Michelangelo, one long name, Michael Anthony. And he says, "Dad," and he starts asking me the question, "Mike, you know what? These are great questions. I'm new here. I don't know. So maybe after a while you can ask the producer." Back then, the producer was John Stone, the guy that started Sesame.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
The guy that brought Jim Henson to Joan Gasconi. He's the guy. Yeah. So anyhow, at the end, I said they had a 5-minute break or some kind of a break, and they were all very nice. Even Joe Johnstone was like, he was the taskmaster. He was really on point, but he was having fun too, and he knew that people were there to make their love manifest through the work they were doing. So I said, "You know what, Mikey? Why don't you go ask Mr. Stone that question?" So he goes and he says, "Mr. Stone, why don't you? It looks like the performers have to reverse their performance. He's 9 years old and asking. I wouldn't even thought about asking this at my age, whatever I was at the time. So why don't you reverse the video signal so that it's more like a mirror, so they don't have to confuse themselves? And he says, "Where did you get this kid?" I said, "That's brilliant." And he said, "That's brilliant." Now we do that in England, but we don't do that here because the puppeteers are used to reversing their performance. If I did that, it would throw everything off.
Yeah.
Said, oh, okay. And Carol Spinney said, "This kid is a genius." He said, "Come here." This was the one and only time I was really jealous of my son. Really just like fumingly jealous. Because up to this point, I had not touched the Muppet yet. Carol takes him behind Oscar's garbage can, puts Oscar on his hand, and he says, "Now do a little performance." The thing is, my son's in there, he's moving the mouth and he's using the trigger, the ring trigger to move the eyelids, and like he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, why couldn't he ask me to go back there?
Crazy.
I want to touch Oscar. But now, I mean, when I do a presentation or I do something like that, and I have to bring the Muppets with me, sometimes I have them at home. And I don't leave them in the bag if they're in my house. I take them out and I play with the Muppets, man. Now, go ahead, keep asking me questions because I might get to something. I don't want to jump the gun. But yeah, so that was a cool thing. Just recently we did they had like they call it an off-site, but it was actually at Sesame, just on the 8th floor. And they were talking about a lot of different things that the company's doing, and then they knew it was going to be very like kind of heavy, so they had a special surprise for us. Marty Robinson came in and gave us.
One of our previous guests.
Yeah, he gave us a puppetry lesson. And the thing is, of course, because I know Marty, anytime he said, "I need a volunteer," and I jumped out of my seat. And at the end, I said, "Okay, look, you know what? Let me give somebody else a chance." So he was going to do a live hands Muppet, where he has his, live hands Muppets.
Right.
So he says, "Oh, I need a volunteer," and I'm not looking at Lewis because I know he wants to do it. He's looking around, and nobody stepped up. I said, "Marty, I want to do it." So I went up and did it, and so I was actually puppeteering with Marty Robinson. It was just a generic anything Muppet, but it was really great to be there and to hear him talk and to really feel that. I had never done that. I had put on different Muppets before, but never with one of the Muppeteers, one of the King Muppeteers too. Right. My wife's favorite character is Abby Cadabby.
So,
nice.
Love
Abby.
Before we got married, I of course dating her and stuff like that. I said, what would be a nice date? Because she grew up on Sesame like everybody else, but she really, really loved it. And I don't know if that's why she hooked up with me when I told her that I worked. I didn't tell her at first, so it was okay. It was me, it wasn't Sesame. But after a while, I told her, I work for Sesame Street. Are you kidding? That's my favorite show. What do you do? And I started telling her, "Oh my God," she couldn't believe it. And then I said, that'd be a really good date. That might seal me in there. So I bring it to the set, and of course, people like Ryan Dillon and Eric, and I mean they're just so good to me. I go on there, and of course, all the characters. Grover's, "Hello, Louis, how are you?" And Elmo's like, "Louis, where you been?" And she's like, "Can't believe that I'm like royalty on Sesame Street." So, they do that to so many people, but I'm glad they did it to me while she was there. And we took pictures, and on the stoop, she couldn't believe it. That's really the stoop. I said, "Yeah, this is it. This is really set." When you're on the set, have any of you guys been on the set?
No. I would love to.
That'd be amazing.
I would love to. I know some people who work on Sesame.
All these years later, man, when I go there, it never feels like a TV set. It always feels like a neighborhood. You look up, you see the lights, but even that doesn't distract from how it feels like a neighborhood. Because everybody who grew up with it. I was a little bit older when it first came on, but I still loved it and I still watched it. But it was like, so anyhow, she got to go to Mr. Hooper's store and into Oscar's garbage can, and she couldn't believe she was going through all this stuff. So I was pretty much in with her. That was a good move.
My parents grew up watching it as well.
Same,
a
a lot of family members who grew up with Sesame.
Did she eventually get to meet Abby at all?
Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me. So Leslie was in that day. I don't think she was doing Abby though. She was doing something else. And I went and said, "Hey Leslie, my wife's favorite character in the world is Abby Cadabby." And then she vanished. It was almost she had a transporter and she just like vanished. The next thing I know, I see Abby Cadabby coming out, flapping away. And just, "Where's Yvonne? Where's Yvonne?"
Oh man.
And my wife didn't know what to do with herself. She couldn't believe that Abby knew her name and everything. So she was really, really excited. So it was just divine. You know, I've been to the set so at one point I was practically living there. I was there like every day, you know, doing story. Like when Abby first was first introduced, I did the storyboards. I was actually there because Kevin was going to direct that particular segment about introducing her. So they said, "Can you just come on the set and just look around and do some sketches and see what, you know, where she might, you know, fly, or, you know, we could do what kind of special effects. Just think about what we could do with Abby." It's all right. So I just looking around and I'm sketching and I'm looking at, you know, the wall on the side, the arbor side of Mr. Hooper's store. There's a big brick wall. I said, you know what, that'd be nice if she would pass over that big brick wall. And I'm thinking about the garden. It's a little different. The set's different now, but back then it was, you know, so I'm thinking about different places. And you know what happened to me, guys? I was sitting on the stoop doing these sketches because they were all recording in the arbor. So I was, you know, on the stoop. I look and said, you know, that's Mr. Hooper's store over there. And I said, that's the arbor. And I looked behind me and said, I'm freaking on Sesame Street. And this is already like what, maybe 18 years in, maybe less than that, but it was like I had been there for a long time. It never ever gets old. Every time I go on that set, I want to cry. I really do. I get choked up many times, you know. And the thing is, I think about it too, that some of the set pieces, not so much now, but when I first started to go there, some of those set pieces were actually pieces that Jim Henson was around. I mean, him and Frank Oz. Yeah. So I said, you know, oh God, I'll tell you this one quick story because again, when I was doing I was learning how to draw the characters and things like that, and I had to go to the Jim Henson Company back when it was in the townhouse, and because they moved since then, but there was this beautiful townhouse, and they were, you know, actually no, I went to the towns, but then they had the workshop on I think 67th Street, I believe it was. But anyhow, I was up there, and they said, all right, so we're gonna get the puppets out so that you guys can take a look at them and, you know, sketch them and understand them on a 3-dimensional basis, which is really great. That's the benefit of the Muppets. When people draw them, they have 3-dimensional reference of who they really are. Like Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny, those guys, and I love them, but they started out as animated drawn characters. But the Muppets, when I first was introduced to them, they were already 3D. They were already real and in the real world. So that's a benefit. So he said they want us to experience that. So me and a couple of other artists went up there. So of course, now Cookie Monster is my favorite. I'm sure you're going to ask me at some point. Cookie Monster is my favorite character of all time. And he's been a blessing to me. Monster. Cookie Monster is the reason I became a member of the board of trustees at the Norman Rockwell Museum. That's another story. If you want it, I'll give it to you later. But anyhow, so they started handing us only about 3 of us in there, but whoever was it, Ed Christie? I forgot who it was that was handing out the Muppets to us. So they handed me Ernie, and Ernie was my first favorite because then I love Rubber Ducky. Right. Ernie was my first favorite. So then he said, "Yeah, so put it on." You know, I said, "I get to put Ernie on." You know, I put, you know, I'm doing the left hand and the right hand with the head. I said, "I can't believe this. I can't believe this is amazing to me." So then after a while, I took him off and I noticed a label there on the inside. And I forgot who built that particular Ernie, but it had the date on it like that. And the date was, I think, was 1985.
Oh, wow.
And it dawned on me, I said, this was one of Jim Henson's Ernies. Yeah. And the thing is that I put my hand, because again, he was not like brand new. They're really protective of the Muppets, of course. I put my hand inside and I'm feeling around to feel like the hand indentations. said, freak, this is Jim Henson's. This was one of Jim, and I started crying, man. I really did. Even now I get choked up.
Oh.
So this was Jim Henson's Ernie. I mean, of course they have more than one, but this was one of them. And I just couldn't. I didn't know what to do with myself after that. But of course, I kept it together because I don't want to get fired or kicked out. But I said, I put my hand inside of one of Jim Henson's Ernie's, and I felt his hand indentations in there. Just
Wow.
beyond a dream. I'm telling you, my dream was to work for Sesame as an artist. I didn't know I was going to get to put Ernie on, but then, and there's a picture of me. There's two pictures of me. Actually, I'm sorry about that. The first one they gave me was Cookie Monster. And of course, I was so dumbfounded that they took a picture of me holding a cookie, and I look like I hate it. I'm like this. Because even when I was a kid, whenever something was overwhelming to the point where I couldn't handle it, I would just freeze. My expression would freeze. When I was about 4 years old, I met Goofy at the World's Fair in Queens. It was like 1964.
1964.
Yeah, and Goofy came up, and my family's telling me, "Come on, smile." I'm like this, because back then,
Nope.
Goofy was. I loved Goofy, but I couldn't smile. It was too much. My face froze. I couldn't do it. Inside, I was feeling like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the whole world." But so the same thing happened to me when I had Cookie Monster. But when they handed me Ernie, of course, I didn't know about that. It was Jim Henson's Ernie yet. I had a big smile on my face. Yeah, he's Ernie. I was smiling. I was real happy. Yeah, I got to hang out with the Muppets and everything like that. It was just so divine, man. So
that's amazing.
Definitely.
That's awesome.
So now, besides like Sesame Muppet, do you have like a favorite human character?
Wow, no one's ever asked me that before. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's all these years, and you guys. Let's see. You mean on Sesame, or you mean
On Sesame?
Yeah.
God, that is so hard because they're
So many.
I really love them all so much. To pick a favorite of the humans, my head hurts. I don't know how to do this. You know why?
It's like you pick your favorite child.
Or you could,
We'll give you a pass if you
No,
want.
wait, I don't want to cop out of that, but I'm telling you, I'll tell you why. Like recently, right? I did. Well, Bob McGrath turned 90 years old.
Yeah.
And of course, on the portrait, I was right. So they said, "Louis, you think you can do a portrait for Bob?" I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "Well, who's his favorite Muppet?" And they didn't know. I already knew there was Big Bird, but I was testing them because I do that sometimes. So I went in, I did him in Big Bird. A really nice. It was black and white, but it was like a nice big piece.
Mm-hmm.
And he sends me this. I have a video of Bob McGrath thanking me personally for the artwork, and he says it's one of his prized possessions, the most important piece of art in his office. So this is Bob McGrath. This is television royalty. Just speaking to me like that. Sonia Manzano, again, just a beautiful, wonderful woman. And the thing about it is that I have some mentees, and had two Latina mentees, two young women, the Latin women. And I said, you know what? I wonder if Sonia would be open to talk to them. So I said, look, like on Sesame Street, asking questions is a good way to find something out. All she could say is, no, she won't kill me. So I wrote to her, and within a half an hour, she writes back, "Oh, Louis, I'd love to do that. Yes, if there's somebody you want me to meet." So, oh my God. She did that for two of my mentees. These young women that kind of lost and trying to figure, college is a hard time. They didn't know what they were going to do. And they got a personal interview with Sonia Manzano.
Wow.
And one of them just broke down crying when she called me up to thank me. She says, "Hi, Louis. I can't believe it." And she went berserk. She just, "I can't believe I got to speak with Sonia Manzano. She was so nice. And she gave me all this advice." And she went, I said, "Oh, man." See, Roscoe Orman.
Yes.
I mean, he's like my brother, man. He's just the sweetest guy. I did for 1 year for Black History Month, I did portraits of 3 of the African-American actors.
Yeah.
And, so one was, of course, Dr. Loretta Long, and then one was it was Roscoe. And so he, of course, he writes me this email saying how this message, because we're Facebook friends. And he says, "Hey, that was really beautiful what you did." And I said, "Well, you know what, Roscoe, if you want, you can have the drawing. I mean, I'll bring it to this set." He says, "I can have it." He got all excited about my drawing of him. So he said, "Can I come up to Sesame to get it?" So you want to come up just to get this? He said, "Yeah, I can't wait to get it." So then I think the next day he comes up to Sesame, have a private visitation from Roscoe Orman. You know, I did the same thing with Dr. Loretta. She wanted her drawing too. So I went on the set because I think at the time she was having some ailment. So I said, "Look, I'll be there." And we had the greatest time laughing and talking. And I'm telling you, every time I talk to these people, after I leave them, I say, "Wait a minute, that was Gordon, or that was Maria, or that was Susan, that was Bob." And Bob was the only one that kept his real name, but it was just awesome to
Yeah.
And they're regular people. I mean, of course, they're TV royalty, but when you meet them, they're as sweet as can be. I met.
Yeah.
I guess I met them all. I mean, Alan is another sweetheart.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Love Alan, man. He's really funny. I did storyboards of him. I forgot what the segment was, but it was Elmo and Alan was in there. And of course, sometimes when storyboards have to go fast. And I don't know, sometimes I'll make certain people look a little bit like me without even realizing it, just because, I'm just drawing a face. So Alan, right there on the set, he says, look at these beautiful storyboards Louis did. And look how he drew me. It looks like he and I had a child together. I just cracked up. I said, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
Alan. But it was hilarious. It was hilarious. It was just beautiful.
There you go.
That's amazing.
Also, I want to point this out. Since you mentioned Cookie Monster, your drawing of him on Below the Frame is amazing. We actually saw it.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Which drawing is that? Which one?
It was when I saw you on Matt Vogel's show Below the Frame, and you were drawing a Cookie Monster. Yeah.
Cookie Monster.
Yeah. Cookie's my boy, man. I'm telling you. He's the one that really opened up so many doors for me, and just because I love him,
Exactly.
And it's not because he eats cookies.
Exactly.
He doesn't love cookies.
Yeah.
It's because he loves cookies so much, but he would still give his last cookie away. And the reason why he would do that is because he thinks that his friends are going to feel as good as he does. It's like somebody passing a joint, but not really. It's like somebody feeling so good about doing something. But he, I hope that wasn't inappropriate. I'm sorry.
Nah.
It's fine.
You're fine.
I don't smoke that stuff. I never did that, but I see people passing it. It's like, wow, thank you, man. I can't wait. So he thinks that his friends are going to feel as good as he does when he eats cookies. Of course, that's not possible. But even if there's the slightest hope that they're going to feel that good, he wants them to have it. So more than once on the show, he's given away his last cookie. It's really
definitely.
It's also great to think that his real name is not Cookie Monster; it's Sid.
Yeah, but you know what? His real name. I mean, that was just in a song he was singing, But the thing is that he's really the googly-eyed monster. That's really what his name is from way before. He had teeth and everything. He looked.
I've seen pictures.
They had to take his teeth out, take out his dentures when he came on Sesame Street because he was scary looking.
Yeah, you definitely would have scared some kids.
Yeah. You thought the last question was hard. I think this one's going to be hard as well. Do you have a favorite Sesame Street song?
Rubber Ducky.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult, Wyatt.
Not that one, but
just so many.
The thing is that it is still hard because I also love C is for Cookie.
Yes.
But so I can say my first favorite was Rubber Ducky. And I guess my new favorite is C is for Cookie, but Rubber Ducky still touches my heart, man.
There's so many amazing.
Definitely.
Like that, they can't take that away from me. Which Cookie Monster sings. Amazing.
I don't remember that one offhand.
I've never heard that one.
There's so many. I mean, come on, there's
so many.
I don't want to live on the moon. That one's one of my
favorites. Go off Cookie Monster if the moon was Cookie.
What was that?
The one about the moon being a cookie.
Oh yeah.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah. Oh, so many good ones.
Yeah, so many classics.
Yeah.
So throughout your career, you've done a ton of still photography with Sesame Street, like designing the home video covers, creating stills. What's all that like?
It's amazing because and again, these are great questions, guys. I love them.
Thank you.
I one of the things that I do, they'll have a lot of like artists come in from all over the world. They used to do that more frequently before because there are so many co-productions and so many products out there. We can't do all the artwork, so we art directed, and we have the artists come in. So one year when we did, it was a kind of a style guide, and we wanted to give a gift to the artists and to talk to them about how to draw the artists and how to communicate through them and things like that. So it was my turn to talk about the photo shoots. So when I was talking about the shoots, I said, you know what? Because they're my friends, I always tell people, give me the list of shots you need, but don't tell me what you want them to do. They're going to tell me. And of course, they look at me kind of strange. So anyhow, at that big meeting with all the artists, they had some of the executives wanted to be there for that meeting. So I'm telling everybody, so you know what? It's really great to have to speak with the Muppets because whenever I'm on the set or if I'm drawing them, I don't decide anything. Because I know them and I love them. They're in my heart. I know what to do. At a photos, you know what? Each the Muppeteers have their characters. I have to be all of them, including like Prairie Dawn. I have to become Abby Cadabby. I have to do all that
Elmo.
So Elmo, everybody.
Yeah.
So they even Snuffy wants to shoot, but that's another story. Anyway, so I said, so they talk to me. So the thing is, whenever they tell me what the next shot is, as soon as I get to the desk, they have already spoken to me about what they want to do. And I gave them examples of, one time Elmo, we had to do like a stem thing, like a wheelbarrow thing. So they said, we need Elmo with a wheelbarrow. Okay, don't tell me anymore. He'll tell me the rest. So even before the shoot, Elmo was telling me, I won't do the voice. Get Elmo a bunch of apples. And I hear it in his voice. So, but get one green one. So it's all right. So I told Henson, I need a bunch of apples and I need one green one. I didn't know yet what he was going to do with it. Honest to God, guys, this is my life. So when you get there and, Henson goes, the Wranglers, they set everything up for me. And want to make sure that the apples don't fall out. So first they put all the apples in there, very, very nicely. And then as I walk up, I don't know what's going to happen. As soon as I got to the table, Elmo told me what he wanted. He wanted, out of all those red apples, he found one green one and he was psyched. So the pose was Elmo, walking with the wheelbarrow, but really excited, holding up his one green apple that he was so excited about. And again, I didn't make that up. I don't make these things up. I don't go in there. And a lot of times at the production meetings, I don't like to go to I never look at the shot list. I call it a shot wish list because if you miss a shot, people get upset. But if you call it a wish list, they say, well, it was something I wished for. So if I didn't get it, it's fine. Although lately the shoots go so well that I not only get all the shots on the list, but I also do extra stuff. Just, again, exercising the characters and kind of, fleshing out more of what the possibilities are. So the executive told me, Louis, you really can't say that to anybody. You can't tell people that the characters talk to you like that. That sounds a little strange. And I said, well, then you know what? Then don't invite me to the meetings because I'm not going to lie. This is my life. This is from a little kid who fell in love with the Muppets at 6 years old and eventually became part of this whole thing, the Muppet world, in such a big way.
Yeah.
That's what happens to me. I hear them. I'm a musician, so I hear music in my head sometimes. But even when I'm writing my own pieces, I'm hearing it sometimes beforehand. But when I'm with the Muppets, they talk to me. I don't care who it is. Snuffy, Big Bird, Slimy. Slimy talks to me with that high-pitched voice of it. I love it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Definitely. So, now we mentioned this a little bit earlier. So, what was it like getting to design and co-sculpt the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade floats?
Yeah, it was great. The only reason why I got to sculpt it was because when I first designed, the first one I did for them was for Sesame was Big Bird. I had done one before for a doll called Sky Dancers. It was a doll from way back.
Oh, I know about them.
Yeah. So actually, it was very popular. It was rivaling Barbie at the time. So they had me design a Macy's balloon for Sky Dancer.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyhow, so when Sesame saw that on my resume, they got excited because they knew they were going to need a new balloon. So they gave me the assignment, and I got to go to the Macy's studio, and it was in Hoboken back then. You know what was cool, guys? This is great. I got to tell you this part of the story. When I was a kid, I loved the Macy's parade, and my favorite balloon was Underdog.
Yes.
Oh,
I
yes.
Loved
Love
Underdog. That was my guy.
Yes.
So anyhow, then flash forward. I'm in the Hoboken studio at Macy's, and John Popper, beautiful man, was give me a little mini tour. We had a lot of work to do, so he gave me like a little mini tour. But then we went to this one room that looked like a bunch of giant caskets all along the wall, which is kind of weird. And he was just kind of passing through. I said, "Well, John, what's this room? What are those boxes up there?" He says, "Oh, those are balloons that we flew in the past. Now, we don't find them. We don't throw them away. They used to release them out in the city, but it was causing all kind of chaos. So we just collect them and we just store them here." And I said, "There were these plaques on them." And one of the plaques said Underdog on it. I said, "Well, can I ask you a question? This one says Underdog." He says, "Yeah." I said, "This can't be the same Underdog balloon from like when I was a kid, when we only made one. You mean I was right next to that same balloon that I saw on TV?" And I hugged the box. I had to give the box a big hug. They didn't open it. They didn't open it. That was the same balloon that I saw when I was a little kid. So anyhow, I had my moment. We went upstairs, and I look at the maquette. The maquette is a small clay sculpture of whatever it is. Like a first pass of it. And he looked like Tweety Bird. His head was big. His body was small. And I didn't get mad, but I said, "What's this?" So, "Well, Louis, we have to compensate for, because the lift." He started talking about the dynamics of balloon flight. "I don't care about that. You can't fly that." I said, "No." And I said, "No, Big Bird's proportions, we know, but if we use his actual proportions, it won't really work." I said, "Well, did you even try?" I didn't look at they even tried. They went right for that Tweety Bird look. And I said, who Tweety Bird is, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Warner Brothers. So anyhow, so I went ahead and he said, "Well, do you sculpt?" I said, "Give me those tools." So I started slamming on more clay and cutting clay away and re-sculpting his head. And they looked, and I did a rough version of it. And they said, "Oh, Louis, see, that won't fly." And they explained to me that, in the head, a balloon is just going to be oval shaped or round. We have to use a series of cables to pinch on the inside and pull to make that shape. And, they have that nice, big, beautiful shape. And so with all the cables we have to put in there to make that shape, it's going to weigh down the head, and his body is a lot bigger, so he's going to be dragging his beak on the street. And I said, "But you can't fly Tweety Bird. That's a different. You can't do that." All right, let's go. We went back and forth for a while. He was getting shorter, but I said, "No, that's too short." So they kept on going until we got a nice rough medium ground, which felt good. And I said, "You know what? This is how I rationalized it." He was kind of squat, but this was designed to be viewed from the front on TV. Now, of course, people will see it from the side, but as long as you see him from the front, then you'll see that he looks like Big Bird. He looks normal. He looks like he's really tall. And so I said, that works. That's going to work. So it went ahead and did that. Then I did Super Grover, the balloon, a few years later. That was very fun. I mean, I had done also, they had other floats. It was the same box, and I just had to design the repainting of it. But then for the 35th anniversary, they wanted a brand new float, and I'll get to that in a second. But anyhow, so I was doing Super Grover.
Yeah.
And I did all these drawings, and the thing is, I don't know what made me do it, because normally they just need like a front view and maybe a side view. But I said, no, I'm going to go ahead and do all the views, because I wanted his cape to look like it's like flowing in the wind, different things like that. So I did a lot of stuff in there. And then when the balloon came, they did the maquette. The maquette looked very good. I did have to make a couple of tweaks, but then the maquette was really nice. And then they had what's called a paint operation, or I forgot exactly what they called it. It was a fiberglass casting of that maquette that they were going to paint. And they said, well, Louis, you know what? You want to paint it? I said, yeah, sure. I'd love to paint. I'd love to do the color. So I was painting it, and I said, you know what? I want to, because he's Super Grover, I'm going to, and of course I come from comic books, I'm going to render his fur to look a little bit like the way they would do it in a comic book. So I did it that style. And then just for me, on his forehead, on the maquette, on the paint operation, fiberglass molding, I did a Superman curl right there on his
wow.
forehead.
Oh,
Just for
wow.
me. Just for,
Wow.
when I saw the actual balloon, they kept the Superman curl. You can almost see it. Because the sun was on it, you can't really see it that well. But if you ever find a picture of that thing and look at it, you'll see a little bit of tail end of the Superman curl. I said, my God, I'm glad I didn't like write my name or some expletive on there, because they followed my paint guidance to the T.
Wow.
And then the day of they flew the balloon, they told me later on that balloon got more airtime than any other balloon in the history of the parade.
Wow.
And it wasn't because it was such a cool balloon. And they showed every angle, including the undulating cape, which you would not see because normally they had an aerial view of it. They showed every angle of it. But it's because the marching band behind him was late. So they had to fill the time in with something. So they just shot every angle of the balloon and kept talking about the Super Grover balloon. So I'm glad that marching band was late, behind Grover, because, it got all those shots in there, which was really, really cool.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. So now you on the subject of the Macy's floats, you mentioned something about the 35th anniversary float.
Yeah, that was a special one because I had done a sketch of it, and because one camp at the workshop wanted to think about where we came from. Another camp said, no, we want to think about where we're going. And they kind of not argued, but they kind of went back and forth trying to decide who was right. And they said, well, Louis, you figure it out. And they gave it to me, and I had to figure it out. So what I did was I did a sketch of the old building in a new perspective. So I did both, the old building reaching for the future. That's why if you see it, you see that there are no real right angles. It's just like reaching out to the sky. Have you seen the float? You've seen the float.
Yeah, definitely.
They still use it.
That
was for the 35th anniversary. We're in season 54 now.
Yeah.
Working on that. And they're planning to use that same float. They fell in love with it. But the problem was at the time when I showed Macy's my drawing, they said, oh, we can't do this. We'll show you what we can do based on your sketch. So they did the regular building, and just at the top of it, they kind of curved out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Said, no, guys, everything's got to be reaching for the future. The building itself, even the mailbox, Big Bird's mailbox, everything's got to be reaching out. It all has to be warped, like going to the future.
Yeah.
And so we'll try, but you know what? You may not have a float this year. That's what scared me. When I heard that, I said, uh-oh. And I thought my job was on line, because that was a really big, they had the same float for many years, and then they having a brand new one, and the one that I proposed was not going to be able to be built. I said, oh my God. So I got really nervous. I thought I might lose my job over this because it's such a high profile thing. So I went ahead and I redrew the drawing they did, but I pushed it even more for more angles. That's when they said they couldn't do it. So anyhow, they found after a while, I'm nervous the whole time. It took about maybe 2 months or maybe longer than that. So every day I'm thinking about, God, I hope they can do something with my drawing. Finally, they called me and said, Louis, we want you to come to Hoboken so you can see what I did. I'm saying, God, it's probably going to be terrible. I get there and it's beautiful. And it's like, you've seen it where everything is just reaching out for the future, reaching into the sky.
Yeah.
And including Big Bird's, his mailbox and everything. So they said, Louis, you know what? And I've heard this many times in my career from the Jim Henson Company, from other companies, including Macy's. So you've asked us to do things we've never done before. We had to invent tools to get us to do what you asked us to do, to make sure that it was secure. I said, really? So and it wasn't painted, but it was my design. I said, oh my God, people were bowing to me. Louis, thank you for believing in us. I said, please get away from me. I just wanted to run up and down the float and look at it. Kevin Clash came with me that day too, and he's running up and man, this is beautiful. When I saw the actual float painted and everything, again, I'm a crybaby, guys. I'm not afraid of it because I'm living this life that well beyond what I thought I was gonna. I just wanted to be part of this, and now I'm just seeing my work come to life. From my drawing table to the Macy's parade. I mean, come on, this is like crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm just enjoying it, man. Just really, really a beautiful, beautiful experience to see my drawing come to life And I get a lot of that at Sesame, and I never take it for granted. I say, oh my gosh, I designed that character and it showed up. I designed this, I designed that, and it's really happening. It's there. The one thing about that float, though, because when it comes to the Sesame Street logo, the sign,
Yeah.
you can't mess with the company's logo. But I told him, I said, look, if the only thing on that float that's going to be straight is a Sesame Street, it's going to look weird. It's going to look. So I did a sketch, and they said, Louis, really, we're not supposed to do this, but I guess it would be kind of weird if they. So they let me warp the Sesame Street sign. So the next time you see it, I was the first one. They didn't give me credit for that, but I was the first one to actually warp the or mutate the Sesame Street sign because it had to be on that float, and they actually gave me permission to do it. That I don't know if you guys understand. That's like corporate identity. You don't mess with that. But again,
right.
Because we're mission driven. We see sometimes you got to push a little bit more. They only just the one time they did it like that, and to that degree anyway. So I was really, really grateful for that.
Nice.
That's
really
awesome.
nice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Overall, do you have a favorite Sesame Street project you worked on?
Now, this is going to sound like a cop-out. It really is. And I apologize up front.
That's fine.
Whatever I'm working on at the moment,
There you go.
that's really the answer, man, because that really is. I'm so excited that I still get to do this all these years later and that I'm still so psyched to do it. Next week, all week, I'll be directing a photo shoot next week. And I can't forget because they're all Muppets that I designed. I mean, I designed all these human Muppets, and I call them human Muppets because they're like flesh-colored Muppets. I'd say this. One of the new Muppets called Wesley.
Yes.
Yes, we actually had him on.
Yeah.
Bradley Cooper Jr. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
sweet.
Yeah, but
Well, guess what, guys?
it goes to Chris Thomas Hayes.
Right, Chris Thomas Hayes. Right, he's a sweet guy. Love the guy.
Awesome.
That Muppet is
Amazing
actually that Muppet is actually my son, because when I had to do when I had to will you calm down? I'm kidding.
That's the first time anybody's told us that. First moment.
You know why? It's because when I design a new Muppet, I have to design at least 3 different variations to give because again, there's a lot of people that have to weigh into this because there's a lot of different needs for the character. A lot of different things we have to take into consideration. So, but it is my design. So I designed 3 of them. But they had a little black kid. He was, I think, 6 years old. I said, you know what? I'm going to throw my son Mikey. I'm going to throw Mikey in there as one of the designs. From when he was a kid.
Yeah.
So I didn't say a word. Didn't say anything to anybody. I didn't want to get biased in either direction. Like, oh, you can't do that, Louis. Or, oh, you know what? Since it's your son, let's just use it. I didn't want any of that. I just submitted it. Now, because it's my son, I'm sure I put something extra into it. I try not to think that way, but I'm sure I did. As soon as they saw that sketch of the 3 sketches, oh, that's him. That's great. We love him. I still didn't say anything. So anyhow, I'm art directing and everything. And so Henson's doing the prototypes and stuff like that and testing and all the tests. And I'm art directing it all the way through and everybody's weighing in. I'm saying, this is looking nice. And it's looking more and more like Mike. I said, oh man, I can't believe this. So finally, I didn't say anything until the final Muppet was finished. And they said, oh, by the way, I actually used my son for when he was 6 years old. And then I have this side-by-side comparison. The picture that I used of my son when he was back then. And they said, even Raleigh Cruson is the one that builds. She's like the master builder. Mm-hmm. She built him. And she's like, oh my God, it looks just like him. She didn't see the photograph, but I art directed it to look like it. So my son, he's always Mr. Cool, Mr. Even Keel. But when he found out that he was going to be a Muppet on Sesame Street, he went, Dad, he flipped. He went berserk over that thing, man. And then when I had to do I designed his dad too, his father, Elijah. When I did the photo shoot, it was incredibly emotional for me because I'm looking at this Muppet, I'm thinking about Mikey and how as I raised him, that was one of the easiest shoots to do. Because all I did was just remember what we did when he was a kid. We were tight. We're still very tight, but when he was a little kid, Dad was the whole world, even over his mom, which is very rare. But I remember all the different things we did, and all I did was I got to relive that time of our lives at the set, doing the same poses, and it was amazing. It's just amazing to me. So, and of course, I got choked up many times. The first time I had actually handled him, I said, "This is my son," and I just started crying.
Yeah.
All happy tears.
That's
by the way.
amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
will say
gosh.
this. Speaking of photo shoots,
I did not know that.
that's
That's
crazy. I
crazy.
didn't know either. I will say, speaking of photo shoots, the Google one you did is amazing.
Yeah,
Oh,
the one you
thanks.
did
That
for
was-
Google during
That was so much
40th
fun.
anniversary.
40th anniversary.
That took 7 hours to do that.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know what?
That's
I didn't
that sounds
feel
about right.
one- Huh?
Yeah.
That sounds about
That
right.
sounds, it does.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it didn't feel like it, because I
Yeah.
did the sketch first. I was directing another photo shoot, and then the office called me at the carriage house where we used to do the photo shoots. The
Yeah.
building dimension bought to do shoots and different things like that. So I'm in there, and they call me, said, "Lewis, we just got a call from Google. Google wants to do, they want to do one day every day for the week leading up to the 40th anniversary, and then they're going to do their own Google Doodles, but they want us to do the final one. And do you think you can?" I said, "Oh my God, how cool would that be?" So on the way home, I was on the train and I'm sketching and coming up with ideas, and I came up with a pretty good idea. So when I sent it to them, they said, well, where's Snuffy? And they wanted a whole bunch of Muppets, and said, "Look, if you put too many Muppets in there, you're not going to see them or the logo. It's just going to be like a big mosaic. So this way it highlights the logo and the characters." And they said, "Yeah, you're right." At the end, I remember when I was doing the sketches and I realized that I know them so well, the sizes of the characters and everything, that my rough sketch was exactly the perfect fit for the Google logo. When they sent me the letters and I was able to sketch them in before I even got the letters, when you see the sketch of it and you see the actual logo, it's like almost identical, which I was really excited about. One great thing about this, in the case like that, whenever I do a photo shoot with Big Bird, as long as I don't need his legs, I can use the photo Big Bird, which is rig the Big Bird. I can pose like when I was a kid playing with Gumby. That was my practice. But whenever I have to show his legs, I have to hire a performer. So in this particular case, it was Peter Lintz, who I adore. Peter Lintz.
Wow.
Now he's Ernie and he's Harry Monster, but
Yeah.
he was also what was the name of that show when he was? Oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the show now.
Bear in the Big Blue House.
Huh? He was a
Bear in the Big Blue House, Between the Lions.
What was the character like?
It was about a world. It was a big
world.
It's a big world. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one. And the thing is, that's how
Good
he
show.
talks. He doesn't change his voice, but he's got this great voice. He doesn't have to change
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Because that character Snook in that show, that's his, normal voice.
That was him. Yeah, exactly right. So I couldn't get Carol because Carol was alive at the time, but Carol never did photo shoots. If I had to do a photo shoot with Big Bird, I got to work with Matt Vogel, who now is Big Bird.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
Crazy.
But I worked with different performers. But in that case, it was Peter Lintz, and of course he was great. So it was just nice to have him, have Walter inside of Big Bird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyhow, I was kind of hinting at Tyler Bunch before because I just love him. I think he's like the greatest puppeteer.
Yeah.
I mean, I really can't think of anyone that brings puppets to life more than Tyler Bunch. I mean, I hope the other puppeteers don't hate me because I think they're all brilliant, but just something about Tyler that and this was really great. So I've been on the show a couple of times as an extra. And I remember one time they said, "All right, Lewis, there was a girl with Down syndrome that was going to be on, I believe." Yeah. So, and they said, so they were going to focus on her, but the camera was going to pan in front of Mr. Hooper's stall. So they needed me to sit in there, and I was going to be talking to a monster Muppet. And I said, "Okay, well, sure. You have any lines for me?" Because it was Matt Vogel was directing that day. He says, "No, just pretend I can talk." And I said, "Well, it's going to look kind of fake if I do that." It happened to be that Tyler Bunch was the performer, and I hadn't seen Tyler in a while. So I said, "No, Tyler, we don't really have any lines, but maybe we can catch up, So instead of talking directly to Tyler, I was talking to Tyler, the blue monster Muppet. And he was telling me about his wife and the different things he was working on. And the thing is, Tyler's so funny. So I'm in there talking to this monster Muppet, having a good laughing. Every time they pan Mr. Hooper's store, we stole the show. Because I'm in there having a good time and clapping and like bending over in laughter. And they said, could you guys calm down? Because it's not about you. We're trying to pan past and then get to the little girl. But I was having such a good time with Tyler. So it was nice that we actually got to catch up on a while that we hadn't seen each other. But I was talking to a Muppet, a little blue monster Muppet. That was great. It was just so cool.
He is awesome. We're bringing it back so me and Matt can meet him. If you want, we can have you back, have you guys in the same room.
That'd be fun, man. That would be fun.
That would be really fun.
Definitely.
I diagnosed. So, in addition to working and designing for Sesame Street and drawing all that, you created Julia. How did the idea for Julia come about?
That was one of the most special things in my entire life. Not just
amazing character,
Sesame Street, because it was a friend of mine, a girl named Rachel London Carter. She worked with children on the spectrum. And she knew me. She said, "No, Lewis, I think you'd be good for them." She worked at a school on Staten Island, and she said, "I think you'd be good for them." I said, "Well, I wouldn't want to, disrupt their progress because I'm not trained." And she said, "You just have to go and love them." I said, "Oh, well, I can do that." So I love kids. So of course I went out there and I fell in love with all of them. Some of them were they had really challenged with their motor skills and things like that, but they were just so sweet. And and there was one in particular, this little boy that he already knew that I was going there to work with him first. I had 2 kids, but I worked with him first. So as soon as I get in the room, he's flailing away, and I'm saying, "Oh my God, did I do something wrong?" He said, "No, he's excited to see you." And so I worked with them for a while. Then I worked with another little girl, and she just stole my heart. In fact, I remember the last day we were there. She was nonverbal. So I can remember when I was trying to help her with a puzzle, I was holding one puzzle piece in my hand to give it to her, for when she was ready for it. And she got impatient, so she snatched it out of my hand to put it down because she thought I didn't know where it goes. So she was always looking out for me like that. So on the last day, I'm standing outside of the building, and she, and for whatever reason, I think that day most of the men didn't show up. So just for the kids to feel secure, they wanted a guy to be at the door when they went around the block to these trailers where the kids got to actually do like envelope stuffing and building pens and things. I think they actually earned some money with that. It was really sweet. But anyhow, I'm standing at the door so that all the kids are passing me by, and then here comes my friend, the girl that was I was working with, and she stops and she looks around and she comes back to me and she grabs my hand because I think she thinks I was lost. So she grabs my hand to walk me around to the back of the. And I said, "Look at this, man." I was so sad that it was my last day working there because that was so fulfilling. I did not know that Sesame was working on an autism initiative, and they didn't know that I was volunteering with schools on this, for kids on the spectrum. Mm-hmm. So I walk into work one day. This is a couple of months later. I walk into work one day, and of course, I'm still thinking about. I had a picture of me and not me, but of the girl and her family.
Yeah.
So I walk in, and was it Dr. Jeanette? Well, somebody from the autism initiative that I didn't know about came up and said, "Lewis, we've been working on for 10 years. They were working on this thing. We're working on an autism initiative, and we think we finally found a way to do it, and we need a character. So we'd like you to design her." And I said, "You got to be kidding me. If I didn't have that experience with those kids on the spectrum, I wouldn't have touched this." Because I said, "No, you need somebody who really understands this." But because I worked with them in the schools, at their homes, on outings, I was really immersed deeply with their families, became really good friends. I said, "Now I know why I did all that work with those kids, because this was on the way to me." I believe in these things happening, man. Nothing just happens.
Things happen for a reason.
Yeah,
definitely.
Exactly.
Sure.
So anyhow, so the thing is, they did one thing they promised me that I felt good about. They said, "Now she's not going to be a Muppet on the show. We're just going to put her in a book, because when it comes to like their behaviors, everybody's different. So if you talk about a behavior, anybody, if they read that, they'll associate it with whatever behaviors they're experiencing. So you won't leave anybody out when you do it that way." So I said, "All right, that's great." So, but I still designed her with the Muppet sensibilities. And I can talk about that a little bit later on too, if you want, if there's time. But anyhow, I just designed her to be a Muppet in the Muppet world, but even though she's just going to be illustrated. Well, that book that we produced was so successful, and the response was tremendous. So that's when the person in charge of all creative, she said, you know what, we're gonna have to have a puppet. We're gonna need to design Julie as a puppet. And I said, no, we can't do that because we can't represent the whole spectrum with one character. That's not going to work. We're going to leave people out. They're going to feel alienated. Then someone in the research department said, you know what? We're not representing the spectrum. We're pointing to it. We're bringing attention to it. And if we bring attention to it on Sesame Street, a lot more people will. So, you know, that's great. I can get behind that. So I went ahead and I did a 3 drawing turn because we didn't have a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And I had to go back and actually art direct, you know, again, Raleigh Cruson was building Julia. Mm-hmm. And again, I heard something just like with Macy's. Raleigh said, Louis, you're asking me to do things I've never done. And at the time, she had been there for 40 years. I said, I'm asking the Jim Henson Company to do things they've never done. It seemed like they did not done everything, but they never designed an autism Muppet before. Mm-hmm. I said, well, this is an opportunity to do something different. Because the thing is, I want the angle of her eyes to be a little bit different, not to make her look odd, but just to show there's something different going on with her. And, you know, when, like I was talking about before, you know, when you design a character, the minute people see the character, the story has begun. So I put little subliminal storylines in here, like, you know, again, her eyes were a little bit different. So you're looking at her. She doesn't look weird, but you know something's different about her. Then I give her a shape, her nose, the shape of a diamond. Because she's a diamond in the rough. That's what I was thinking when I gave her that diamond-shaped nose. Again, I don't say this to anybody, but subliminally, you'll see the diamond shape, and it's very unusual. They hadn't done anything quite like that before. And of course, it was all going well. But what I said too was, you know, because Julia's never gonna introduce the show the way like Elmo does, like, "Hi, welcome to Sesame Street." Like everybody says that when you first,
right.
But Julia's never gonna do that. So I said, you know, I need to do something to Julia to make her immediately relatable so that, you know, because she's not going to engage with the audience the way everybody else does. So I said, I want to give her human texture hair. And I know Prairie Dawn had human texture hair, but she's a little tiny Muppet. So you don't really think about that. Mm-hmm. But in this case, she was a big Muppet. And I wanted her to have human texture, even though it's going to be an unusual color, like a fanciful color. Giving her human texture hair was going to make her look more like a real little girl. So that way, if she doesn't say hello, you still feel for her. You still she still has this warmth about her. But the executive producer at the time said, well, no, we can't do that because we don't want to separate her like that. We want her to be part of Sesame Street, part of the Muppet world.
Right.
She will be part of the Muppet world, but even Jim Henson always expanded on the Muppet world. This is an opportunity to carry on his legacy. I didn't say all that, but that's my heart. I want to continue, you know, supporting the Jim Henson legacy by, you know, especially in the position that I'm in. So I went ahead and I said, well, no, she needs the human texture hair. And this was the executive producer. And there was a big debate and said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to maybe yarn or maybe ostrich feathers or something to make her a Muppet. And I said, look, all right, I know I don't have the final word, but this is the reason why I want her to be engageable right away.
Yeah.
So the woman in charge of the Autism Initiative, Dr. Jeanette Betancourt, who I adore, she said, you know what? Let's try it Lewis's way. Something in my gut's telling me that maybe that's the way to go. And of course, it worked perfectly. She was, I mean, again, you see for the first time, she's not looking in the camera. She's drawing. And that's when she meets Big Bird for the first time. And he doesn't understand either. He thinks she doesn't like him. But it's a beautiful episode. But the thing is,
I've seen that.
Yeah. And the thing is, again, she seemed more like a real little girl because of that beautiful little hairstyle that she has. And she warms your heart, even though you never look her in the eye, you never even get to speak.
Yeah.
She looks like a little girl. So that was really a rewarding experience. And it was probably the best research that I was ever involved with because, you know, even I went to all the symposiums, all the meetings. You know, I'm sitting with all these PhDs and the executive producer. And then here's Louis, little guy from Brooklyn, you know, sitting among all these highfalutin people. But again, I was the one that was going to give the face to everything they were talking about. All the research and all that is all meaningful. But now, how do we deliver it? And what kind of a package do we put in? Well, I don't think of Julie as a package. That's my little girl. But we still have to think about that. We got to deliver this initiative. How do we do it? And do it in a way that's warm and welcoming. And that human texture hair made the difference. It really, really did. So thanks
Definitely.
thanks for
Nice.
asking about that. That means she means so much to me. You know.
Yes.
Julia.
For
Yeah.
sure. Macy Kid.
Yes.
Macy Muppet.
Yes. So on the same subject of Julia, like how important do you think having a character like Julia is both to Sesame Street and to our community?
Hugely important. Even before
Agree.
all of the inclusion initiatives were coming out, you know, Sesame was always doing that. I mean,
Yeah.
Linda Bove was deaf. She was on the show.
Right.
There was another young man with Down syndrome. I think there was a girl as well. They had people, a girl in a wheelchair one time.
Yeah, Tara.
Tara.
We had her
Yeah,
on
yeah.
previously. Yeah.
Sweet. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
See, so Sesame's always been doing that. And so it's just that because autism was one of those things that no one was really, really dealing with in a real way.
Mhm.
So of course, Sesame's always trying to, you know, look at how can we bring attention to important things that the world needs, you know. And so they came up with Julia. So I hope I answered your question. Did I?
It does.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's very important. I love that. Look, even when Mr. Hooper passed away, it's not like the
Yes.
same.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I think Norman Stiles wrote that episode, and he was thinking that
Amazing.
maybe they should. They were thinking at one point maybe they should get somebody else to be Mr. Hooper, and just continue on. And they said, no, you know, we can't lie to the kids. When I heard that, I said, man, see, this is what Sesame Street is still here because it's genuine, it's real. And they didn't want to lie to the kids. That was a real moment, a pivotal moment, because they could have easily gotten someone else that maybe looked a bit like Willie and just try to pass it, because kids would still see something.
Yeah, people would still be able to tell something's off, and that, you know, it's not, you know, Mr. Hooper.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyhow, they dealt with it, and they dealt with the death. And of course, whenever I do a lecture, Google asked me to go and do a character design workshop for Google. I said, what do you guys want that for? They turned out to be one of the best audiences I ever had. And I showed that clip. And I said, but look, folks, you're gonna need some Kleenex or something, because when you see this, it's gonna hit you, even if you've seen it before. And I showed it to them because, again, to me, that was still the single greatest Muppet performance of all time. Because Carol Spinney had to, you know, be happy when Big Bird Girl's drawing's over, and so then he got confused, then he got upset, then he got angry, then he went through all these emotions. The lids move on Big Bird, but the face doesn't change. And I was talking to Carol about that, and I said, Carol, you know, Big Bird's face doesn't change, but you were able to bring all those emotions to it. And he said, you know, one of the things that I do is I use the lighting. I know that if I tilt this a certain way, the lights are going to give me a different kind of a shadow, and that's going to make him look differently. I said, oh my God, that's amazing to me. He said, but still the character doesn't really change the expression, so it had to be in the performance. And to me, to this day, that is the single greatest puppet performance, not just Muppet. Greatest performance, because and they did it in one take.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Wow. That's so
they may have done it again, but they used that first take, and the tears that were crying were real. You know, Bob was crying, everybody was crying. Yeah, those were real tears. That's why they could only do it in one take. So they told him, look, guys, you're gonna have to get this right the first time, because you know it's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
And they got it.
That's
for sure. It's also since we talk about a little bit of Tyler Bunch, I forgot to mention, you know, he did, you know, all their stuff, not just, you know, puppeteer, but he also did stuff, you know, on camera too.
Hey man, I was watching. Oh, what's the name of that show? That crime show? Law and Order.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of Law and Order. Yeah. So I turn it on, I'm watching, and I see this big, heavy dude running down the hallway, and that's Tyler Bunch.
Yeah.
I pick up my phone and I'm like, I'm sending him a thing. Tyler, I see you on Law and Order, man. He was great. What a great actor. I mean, that's probably why he brings that to the puppet too. Because I don't know, maybe it doesn't translate automatically, but I mean, he's a very convincing actor. But I also saw Sonia Manzano on that show too. She plays a judge. She comes on every now and then as one of the judges, which is really nice to see. But yeah, I was blown away when I saw Tyler on long.
my gosh.
That's crazy.
So obviously I didn't even catch the show because I was so excited about Tyler being on it. I didn't watch it. And I'm busy sending him messages about, man, you're so great, you're so awesome.
Awesome. Amazing.
Oh man.
So here's an interesting question for you. Is there a Sesame Street Muppet that hasn't been used in a while that you wished would return or get used more?
Well, of course, Roosevelt Franklin's the first one.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Love
yes.
Roosevelt
But
Franklin.
there were quite a few. I mean, Don Music, although for the 50th anniversary, they did bring a lot of those
Yes.
characters
Oh,
back
yeah.
out to make their little
That is
cameos.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Amazing. Special.
This is going to be really weird. But I really wish to God that Kermit the Frog could be back on Sesame Street.
Yes.
You know what? I agree. I
I know
absolutely
it's
agree.
not ever going to happen, but
I mean, that's a great answer. Yeah. I mean,
That is
obviously with Disney owning the Muppets, that kind of
Right.
can't happen. But
that kind of can't happen.
seeing him
but-
come back in the 50th anniversary celebration
Oh,
was
yes.
just
Amazing.
everything to me.
Oh, and Betty Lou as well. Betty Lou.
Betty Lou, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Nice
look,
to see
look,
Betty.
everybody came out, man. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
they really did a good job. And the thing is, I got
Sherlock
to do a
Hemlock,
photo shoot
Yeah.
with Roosevelt Franklin. I think that was his original sweater, but of course they
Oh,
had
wow.
to rebuild the Muppet.
Wow.
Right.
No, guys, I get that whenever I go to Henson, see Jason Weber, one of the people that run it.
Mhm.
He knows what a nerd I am. I nerd out on this stuff. And hey, Lewis, you know what we have here? We have the Dark Crystal from the movie. You want to see it? Oh my God, take it out, please. I want to see it. I want to touch it. Can I touch it? And it's just
Yeah.
awesome to be a fan. I'm such a huge nerdy fan. Nerd is a superpower, man. Nerd is
Yeah.
a word now.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I wear it proudly. And
Yeah.
and I nerd out so much, but to be a nerd and also to be the creative director, and I get to go in and see all this stuff and get involved with all this stuff, man, it's like beyond my wildest dreams coming true.
Definitely.
For
Oh
sure.
yeah.
We were just what were we just talking about before I got into all that?
Sesame Street characters returning.
The what?
About Sesame Street characters returning.
Yeah, I know, but there was something I was going to say about
Uh-uh.
that. It'll come back.
You were mentioning Roosevelt Franklin, I think.
Yeah, and Kermit coming back.
And yeah.
50th anniversary and the photo shoot. Yeah, I'm again, there's so many things I can tell. I have endless stories, guys. I mean, it seems like, and there are new ones happening all the time.
Oh
I
yeah.
bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
Somebody correct
Story
me
that
on
never
this.
ends.
Somebody correct me on this. What was the one seal-like character that Kevin Clash played? Because that'd be cool to come back.
Wolfgang.
Yes, bring him back.
Wolfgang, yes. That's right.
Oh, I know what I was going to say now. Thank you, because asking that question brought it back. So we were doing a DVD cover called Silly Story Time.
Yes. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And that was one of those stories, man, because Len Forgione, he was the art director that was going to put everything together. But he said, you know, Lewis, Kermit, the reporter, is in each and every one of these segments. You think it might be possible that we can get Kermit on the cover? I said, well, we can ask. So we submitted the question through Puppet Heap. But they're the ones that build all the new Muppets now for those guys.
Oh.
So it got back, well, no, you can't use Kermit because, we don't want to confuse the market, because they were getting ready to do the first Muppet movie was coming out, I think, that Thanksgiving. But our DVD was going to come out April of that year. So this should be enough of a stretch. And it wasn't just regular Kermit, it was Kermit the reporter.
Right.
So there must have been 3 or 4 attempts. And they said the last one was from the lawyer saying, we're not going to release Kermit the Frog to you. And they gave us the reasons again. But there wasn't enough for me, man. Because again, Kermit the Frog was the Muppet that woke me up was Kermit. He was the one that came out on Ed Sullivan with Jim Henson when I saw him on his hand. So Kermit is really the reason why my creative spirit was turned on.
Mm-hmm.
So so I said, nah, that's not enough. So I hand wrote a letter and I gave it to him. So I said, look, who at Disney needs to see this letter, that, because I really poured my whole heart and soul into that letter. It wasn't long, but I really, as a fan and as a creative director, I put all that in there. I said, who has to see this, right? So I gave it to him and I said, it may not happen. The photo shoot's coming up soon. we'll have to get an answer sooner or later, and then we'll know what to do. So a couple of weeks went by, and I remember it was my son's birthday, and I took him out to his favorite steakhouse, in Manhattan. And usually on the weekends, I try not to look at my email, my work email anyway. So, but I said, you know what? Maybe I got an answer. Let me check it out. So I open up the email, and sure enough, I get the green light. You can have Kermit. I said, oh my God, I can't believe it. They said yes after all those no's, and then a letter from the lawyer. They finally said yes. I got them to give me Kermit. So of course, the day of the shoot comes, and now it was a Thursday and a Friday. Kermit's shoot was on Friday. There was another shoot, I think, that Thursday and the day before, and I can't remember what that shoot was, because I mean, even though I was there and I was loving it, I knew the next day was Kermit the Frog was going to be there, and he was going to be in my hands. I couldn't believe it. So anyhow, he was supposed to arrive at the studio at 1:00 in the afternoon on that Thursday for the Friday shoot. So 1:00 comes and goes, and Kermit was, well, they're never going to be right on time. 2:00, 3:00, no Kermit, and we start getting nervous. And what's going on here? So now I still, even now, next week, the photo shoot I'm doing is with John Barrett. He's the photographer that Jim Henson picked to be the Muppet photographer. He started in 1970, and he's still doing it. And he's retired. He's retired, but whenever I ask him to come out, he comes out of retirement. So anyhow, nice. So we're in his studio, and you say, we don't know what's going on with Kermit. So he calls Puppet Heat. They do a tracking and find out, well, FedEx is saying that Kermit was delivered. So, but he's not here. And the things back then, it wasn't quite as sophisticated as it is now. There was no way to get in touch with the driver right away. And, we didn't know where he was. He could have been on the wrong truck. He could be in Switzerland. Who knows where the box could have been delivered. So we didn't know what to do. I said, oh my God, now what do we do? I said, all right, look, you know what? I worked hard to get them to say yes. I just know Kermit's going to show up. One way or the other, he's going to show up, because he still had to show up Thursday. And I'm still nervous, but I'm saying no. It took a lot to get them to say, yeah, I know he's going to be there. But Len, the guy who asked, he felt bad. He left the studio to wander around the city to see if he could find Kermit. So how do you do that? Where do you even begin to look? And he's looking around. He's just trying to think about what to do. Then he tells us the story. He's walking back, or he went all the way around. He's coming back. Halfway down the block from the carriage house where we did the photo shoots was one of the Fox TV channels, and they had this big open bay. And when they get FedEx, they just dump everything in their big open bay, and then they sort it out later on. But as Len walked by, he saw, only a Muppet person would know this. He saw a little trunk that didn't look like it was regular mail, and he said, "Sir," he asked the security guard this, "Sir, can you check the address on that box?" So the security truck, he said, "Oh, this doesn't belong here." So Len pulled out his ID and proved that he worked for Sesame. And I said, "This is ours," and the address was for the carriage house, but they just dumped everything at Fox. So he comes back in and he looks like Hercules. He's holding the trunk over his head. I found Kermit. So it was really, really wonderful. And then the next day we got to do a photo shoot. That was my full circle experience, because I saw Kermit on TV.
Yeah,
Jim Henson, when I was 6 years old. All those years later, I'm directing a photo shoot with Kermit the Frog. Well, Kermit the Reporter. And it was like, and I told everybody, nobody pinch me. I don't want to wake up from this dream. And I said, wait a minute. This isn't a dream. It's really happening. Yeah. Go ahead and pinch me if you want. Everybody ran up and pinched me. And I was kind of sorry I said that. But at the same time, it just kind of made a moment that much more special. So, I mean, I know it's a long story, but that was worth telling.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Definitely. So we're close to wrapping up. So I guess one question we'll kind of jump to here is besides, still working on Sesame Street, can you share any other projects you're working on now?
Yeah. So like I told you, I wrote the introductions to that Norman Rockwell book.
Yeah.
I guess I mentioned that. So that, and I'm on the board, so I'm really involved with them. I do teachings for them too. I write different things, blogs. My artwork is up in the museum now. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's a drawing of Kermit the Frog looking in the mirror and drawing Jim Henson.
Oh,
I don't know if
wow.
you've ever seen that.
Wow.
No,
It's
I don't think
based-
I have,
I
but
don't
I'll definitely
think
check
so.
it out.
If you look it up, you'll find it because it's all over the place, man. It's based on a Norman Rockwell painting. It's called the Triple Self-Portrait. It's Norman Rockwell looking in the mirror, drawing himself. So I wanted to pay homage to my two favorite artists, Jim Henson and Norman Rockwell. So I combined it, but I did that drawing to get the job at Sesame Workshop, the full-time job.
Mhm.
And they said, well, Louis, you already had the job. I said, okay, well, I guess I did this just for myself. Little did I know that when I did a presentation at Rockwell, they fell in love with that drawing. So I donated it to the museum. So it's in their permanent collection at the Rockwell Museum. And they put it back out they put it up back then too, but they put it out now for this new show they're doing about Rockwell's drawings. So it was nice to be able to walk in and see my drawing on my favorite artist's museum wall. Man, it's so cool.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So now going back to the original question that you asked.
Can you share any other projects you are working on now?
Yes. Okay. So I'm also, so you see a piano back there. I'm working on a jazz rock opera. I've written all this music.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
It's really
Awesome.
different. It's based on it's kind of the stories of a few of the girls I grew up with that a lot of them didn't really make it. Some of them, they got involved with drugs, and some of them we don't know what happened to them. And I remember really feeling bad about one in particular that we never knew her real name. We called her Angel. She was this gorgeous girl, and her family looked like a Norman Rockwell painting, her whole family. But she got mixed up with the wrong people. She ended up getting pregnant. And I don't know what it was. They sent, whenever girls got pregnant back in my neighborhood back then, they would send them down south. Didn't understand what that was about. But anyhow, it really bothered me. So anyhow, I started learning how to write music. And I realized that, all these songs kind of tied together. So I said, I'm going to make this a story about all those girls, but really I'm going to make it one girl. I call her Storm. That's her name. And so I'm working on that. And I have about 9 pieces of music already in the can. I'm getting ready to present it to Netflix as soon as I can, because I want it to be a film.
There you go.
I have my own puppet program too, and I actually started building. I have a tiger. It's like a children's self-esteem program, and I'm working on that now. I'm writing my own book because I want to start an art school. I taught at the School of Visual Arts, and I taught at Parsons. So just recently, I got a literary agent who is absolutely divine. I mean, she's a tough cookie, but she loves my work. She loves what I wrote. I wrote this proposal. She told me it was the greatest proposal she'd ever seen in 35 years. I said, "You kidding me?"
Wow.
She was going to refer me to somebody else, but she wants to be my agent. So we signed the contracts and everything. So I'm well on the way of writing. I mean, the whole book is written. It's right over here, but I just have to organize it. That's
awesome.
So there's a lot of other stuff too. I want to do a full-length feature animated film, but I want to use traditional animation because I want people to remember where all this beautiful animation came from. It came from somebody putting a hand to the paper with a pencil. And I want to, of course, combine it with a little bit of CGI, but for the most part, I want it to be traditionally done so that people remember.
There you go.
Yeah.
As a designer and artist, what challenges would you say you faced in your career?
It was early on when I wasn't sure I was going to make it. And there were plenty of people to agree with me, telling me that I was going to make it, especially my father. Now, my mom was the sole voice at the time until I met my 8th grade art teacher. But because all these other voices were saying, you're never going to make it. And I had that one voice saying, you are going to make it if you keep going. It was hard because one voice among the many, but thank goodness it was my mom. So that voice meant more to me than anybody else. So that was the kicker. And that's why whenever I like this, I'm grateful for you guys giving me this opportunity to talk to young people about, your dreams are not fantasies. Your dreams are seeds.
Definitely.
You plant that seed in the right way, and you stay with it. And eventually it's going to become an oak tree. From an acorn to
Definitely.
Oh yeah. So what piece of advice would you give to anyone who wants to get into designing or drawing?
Okay, now this is it's going to sound like a cop-out, but it's not.
You can.
When it comes to advice is sacred. I can tell you what I did, But to give advice, I'd have to know what your fears are, what your aspirations are, what your, advice is sacred, and I have to earn the right to give you advice. The one thing I can say is, like I did, is I stayed with it no matter what was going on. None of my other friends stayed with it. Matter of fact, one of my best friends, Andre, he passed away and never made it as an artist, and he was a great artist. He just didn't stay with it. He kept trying other things. You can't have a plan B. If you have a plan B, odds are you're going to end up doing plan B. One of my students from SVA, brilliant, smart, could draw, everything like that, but he wanted to get married, and he took a job, and he said, look, just for now, I'm going to do my art, but I got to get this job because I want to get married, I want to have kids. So no, that's nice, man, but it's kind of hard. Once you take plan B, it's hard to get out and go back to plan A. He never made it back to plan A. He still, to this day, years and years, he has beautiful kids, love his wife, but he never, ever, ever went back to being the artist. And he's so good. So that's why I tell people, just please don't give up. No matter what you do, it's gonna be a challenge. It's just that if you stay on your path, the challenges you get on that path are they'll beat you up. They'll kind of won't feel good, but they're gonna prepare you to keep going because it's all on your path. If you want to pass somebody else picks for you, all those hardships are just gonna beat you up and they're gonna discourage you. But when you're doing the ones that are found on the path that you found for yourself, those are the ones that are going to prepare you to keep going.
Definitely.
Those challenges
Yes, for sure.
in context to who you are, And the thing is, I also say, people, you don't decide what you want to be. You discover it. It's already in there. Like I said, it was already in me to do this. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I saw Kermit on Jim Henson's hand. The click happened, and it never clicked back. So, and I stayed on that path. That path was revealed to me, and I stayed on it. And guess where I work, guys? Well, work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Well, what would you like to say to the fans and supporters of Sesame Street?
Thank you. Because of you,
Very
we're
welcome.
still here. Sesame Street's still here because people want it and people love it. Wherever I go in the world, I had to go direct a photo shoot in India. I had to go do teachings in Jamaica. Everybody tells me, oh my gosh, Sesame Street, we love Sesame Street. I grew up on Sesame Street. I learned how to speak English through Sesame Street. It doesn't matter where you go in the world. Everybody has Sesame stories. And I can't tell you guys how good that feels. It feels so good to know that I'm getting to do work that's impacting generations of people. It's not about pride. It's about gratitude, man. Because that was Sesame was around before I got there. I'm grateful that I get to help continue the work and to bring it to another level. Because again, like I said, to hear companies like Macy's and Jim Henson Company tell me you're asking us to do things we've never done before, that means I'm actually contributing to the growth of the mission.
Exactly.
And I didn't set to do that, but to hear that tells me, again, it's about discovery. I'm discovering how I am really contributing something new to this crown jewel on the planet Earth is Sesame Street.
So if people would like to contact you, where can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. That's usually the place that people usually reach out, either LinkedIn or Facebook Messenger. But I think LinkedIn might be the best way. So, it's Louis Henry Mitchell.
Yeah.
LOUISMITCHELL, but Henry in the middle, HENRY.
There you go.
Yes.
And your LinkedIn and everything will be in the description down below.
We always have to end it with this question. I'm gonna set up episode. Of course, this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of, or how would you define the word nostalgia?
Wow, that's a nice question. Nostalgia. Well, of course, it's remembering things from long ago that I still value.
Yeah.
I think about the first episode of Sesame Street.
Yeah.
For sure.
Think about seeing Jim Henson and Kermit on the Ed Sullivan Show. Talk about nostalgia.
Yes.
So nostalgia is another word for treasure. How about that?
Definitely.
There you go.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
That was fun, guys. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being
so much.
a part of our lives.
Yes.
Now when I look at like Sesame Street photo shoots, like going forward, I'll be like, oh, I know the guy that worked on those. Yeah. Well, anyway, everyone, that brings another episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show to a close. Lewis, thank you so much
Thank you so
for
much.
being a
All right,
guest.
thank
It
you,
has been an
guys.
absolute
Thank you.
blast. Yes. Well, everyone, remember to follow us on social media. And of course,
Yep.
follow Lewis. His LinkedIn will be in the description below. Until next time, remember
You're
that you are
worth
worth
it.
it and to always stay
You're worth
nostalgic.
it.
Nostalgic.
And stay nostalgic. Take care,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
See ya.
Goodbye.
Bye. See you next time on another episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Be sure to follow us on social media and stream us wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember that you are worth it and to always stay nostalgic. Bye-bye.